I do this podcast. I try to do it every 2 weeks, right? So this news came out right after I filmed the last one. Um, and it was basically, well, it wasn't really like a news story. Well, it became a news story, but it was just me on Twitter seeing that the NES Classic was trending, or the SNES Classic rather, was trending again. I was like, oh boy, what is it this time? So, we found out a lot of these pre-orders went live, and then all of a sudden it looked like it was another shitstorm. It looked like Nintendo didn't have enough of them. Like they went live on Amazon, Best Buy, um, whatever retail store you can think of. They all went live, and they all sold out instantly again. And I thought to myself, oh shit, here we go again, you know? But then, just a few days ago, earlier this week, um, remember it's September 16th, so earlier this week, Nintendo actually, well, Reggie Fils-Aimé, he did an interview. It was actually, it was either an interview or like some kind of press release. I have it on my phone here. Let's take a quick look. From GameSpot. Here's an article from GameSpot, which I just backed out of. Basically, Nintendo had come out. I do think it was specifically Reggie Fils-Aimé, if I remember correctly, and he was basically like, "Look, first of all, it wasn't our fault, Nintendo's, that is. It was just the retailers posting it on their site, whether they want to get a one-up on the competition or whatever. We don't really know, like, what happened or why they keep doing this, because this is the second time, remember. The first time this SNES shitstorm happened was when Walmart's went live, and everybody pre-ordered it from Walmart. It sold out right away, and Nintendo told Walmart, you have to cancel all those. We didn't tell you could do that. So there's something interesting going on there. But here's from GameSpot. Their article, Nintendo's NES Classic Edition will be back in stock again next year, alongside plans to expand on the planned availability of the SNES Classic Edition. Nintendo has announced that it will revive last year's NES Classic Edition, assuming you haven't yet resorted to the buying system at an exorbitant price. You will have a chance to pick one up at retail price in stores next year. Few specifics were shared, but we know the NES Classic Edition is coming back to at least North America and Europe. It's still a ways off. More information about the timing of the return of the NES Classic Edition will be announced in the future. And, where did they say? So, yeah, basically, Reggie came out and he said it was the retailers who were doing that. Nintendo was like, that's not us. We know what our stock was going to be. But it sounds like some good came out of it. Whatever. Not only are we getting more SNES Classic Editions, and I think, if I remember correctly, that's running into 2018, but then also next year into 2018 now, we will be re-getting the NES Classic Edition. That does beg a couple of questions, and I'm really proud of Nintendo for finally, figuring that out. But it does beg a couple of questions, as I was saying, like, will the cords be longer for the NES Classic Edition? Will it just be the exact same thing? Because the cords for the controllers were really short. That was one of the complaints. Will the games be different? Is there any kind of like licensing changes for that? The SNES Classic should probably just be the same. If there is a Nintendo 64 Classic, it's probably going to take longer to come out now, because it's looking like it probably won't be next year, because if we have the NES and the SNES Classic already coming out next year, we're probably not getting a Nintendo 64 Classic next year. Yeah, I think that's really all I wanted to touch upon with that. This podcast, or this segment of the podcast, if you're watching the full version or the short version on YouTube, whatever, but either one, was originally going to be like, oh god, Nintendo, why? But then they came out and fixed it, or rather, it wasn't necessarily going to be me bashing Nintendo, but it was going to be a little bit more of like me going, what is going on? Because it seemed a little it did seem a little strange that Nintendo's like, we're gonna have plenty more, but then also at the same time they were selling out right away. Um, it's also true that a lot of these will probably, in order to avoid scalpers, because that's been Nintendo's biggest problem with these classic editions and Nintendo's problems in the past. A lot more of these will probably be sold in stores than online, so keep that in mind, because if it's sold in stores, like I work at Target, for example. At Target, when these things happen, we can be like, we limit one per person, and we can keep an eye on that. We can make sure that that doesn't happen more often than not. There's always going to be someone who's like, I went to Walmart, and they have a picture on Twitter. They're like, look, I have 8 of them. And those are just the stores that fuck up. They just don't give a shit, and fuck them for doing that. But, um, but yeah, like good stores, like our Target or whatever, we always do that. So in order to avoid scalpers and stuff, Nintendo will probably be selling a lot more of them in stores than they are online.